thank you very much for joining us. This is just a little wrap up and a summary of what we've been doing for the last couple of weeks. And we did the Leaders Summit a couple of weeks ago. And just before that, we obviously had our FuturePrint conference that ran. And I've invited some of the super panelists and super kind of hosts to come back and just share with us some of their views of what they felt was interesting from the conversations they had, and really just give us a bit of insight into where they think the market's going, and particularly topics that were really challenging us and getting our kind of our interest. So hi to everyone. I'll just go around the group. Brendan, hi.
Hello. Thanks for having me, Mark. Thanks for having me, Marcus and Fraser.
No problem at all. Karis, obviously. Hi, Karis.
Hi.
Pat, hi.
Always delighted to be here.
And Marcus, good to see you.
Hello. Thank you.
I thought what I'd start with is just it'd be useful, obviously, to put a bit of context to why we did the Leaders Summit, which was very much about, we felt, because of the challenges of COVID, that obviously the big events like Drupal and FESPA and so forth weren't taking place. So we wanted to try to run something that perhaps spoke to some of the CEOs and senior directors of big major manufacturers to get a bit of insight into their view for the future and give us that sense of direction, that sense of leadership that the industry was kind of asking for. So I hope that's what we tried, pretty much achieved. I don't know whether anyone has any comments about that. Did you sense that we were hitting the right note there?
Oh yeah, I think you did. If I can jump in, and I'll tell you why. It is really rare to get both LinkedIn messages and personal emails within an hour of a presentation. It's like, wait a minute.
That's good.
I mean, it's always delightful, right? I mean, it's what your goal in life is, that wow, people were really listening. But sometimes it has a long tail, especially with these kinds of events. People get listening to all the next sessions, and it might take 3, 4, 5 days before somebody goes, oh wow, I really like that, or I absolutely disagree with you, and ping you back. But literally within the hour of finishing up the piece that I did for the CEO summit, I was getting messages from people, and I was delighted by it, because what it told me is that there's this craving for guidance at that level. And I know the last year's been so hard for so many companies, but I mean, my topic was about how failing is okay, right? That you don't have to be perfect all the time. You don't have to be the winner all the time. Failing is an option. And I was so surprised by the response to it.
No.
People were listening.
I think exactly as you said, it's interesting because obviously we're always challenged by the fact that it's not the same as going to a conference live, or it's not the same as going to an exhibition live. But actually, if we can somehow stimulate people's conversations afterwards, and I think you're right. A lot of people said to me that they were getting direct contacts after the event from people who'd watch their sessions. So any other thoughts on that same subject?
Yeah, I'll just add, I completely agree. I think what FuturePrint has done since the first virtual summit event last year is really kind of hit upon what people want from their content. And I think the Leaders Summit was sort of the culmination of what that original goal was. There was an absence of events, there was an absence of leadership, there was an absence of the normal ways in which we connect and we get our information. And, that was the original, virtual summit goal. We'll just provide that platform. And it worked really well. And I think the Leaders Summit is a natural progression of, it's been a year since the pandemic, and, almost a year since we were kind of coming up with that initial event. I say we, it was Fraser and Marcus, obviously. I'm taking the credit for the virtual summit.
Karis, you can.
And I think it's a natural progression that we'd allow the industry leaders to actually say, look back on not only their careers, but the last year, and really set out their vision, of where things are going, especially as people have, a lot of people have ripped up the roadmap because, because of the pandemic. So to have to get a new opportunity to set out, what in many cases is a heavily amended or different vision, was great, I thought.
And it was interesting, actually. Some of the, for example, I'm thinking of Pascal Jury from AGFA. As CEO of the AGFA, a lot of the people who were delegates watching his presentation were AGFA people from around the world who were interested to know what's our CEO thinking and what's his kind of roadmap for the future. So actually that was what perhaps we were missing. We said it ourselves, we kind of were expecting to go and see these CEOs at Drupa and hear them present at Drupa, maybe go into those press sessions where they launch a product or share a product, the news about the products, and they just weren't able to do that. So if nothing else, that's what our Leaders Summit was trying to do, and it seemed to achieve that. Brendan, did you want
Fraser,
to
Fraser, just a quick follow-up on that, though. One of the things that struck me about Mr. Jury's presentation is that, that wouldn't have been accessible to all those people any other way. Because even, if you think about what happens when we go to Drupa, those events get very tightly managed. The typical salespeople, the technicians, the marketing team members, they're not invited to those presentations.
Yeah, the comms team control often these sessions, don't they, and manage it. And it was interesting with him at the end of the conversation, because it was quite a flowing conversation. I started to get stuff from him that perhaps he wouldn't have shared. He talked a bit about corrugated and said, watch out for AGFA in corrugated. We're coming on that. So it was quite interesting that we were getting a little bit of kind of the secrets that we wouldn't necessarily hear from them. Brendan, was there anything you wanted to add?
Yeah, I think you actually hit on it just now. I think leadership, especially over the last year, has been a lonely place. And I think a lot of the leaders in our industry have been under more pressure than they've ever been under before. And that's on top of the fact that in the print industry, people who've got into positions of leadership have had a really tough time. It is hard. I mean, talking to our, to OEMs and a lot of the decision makers and leaders there, they're being asked to achieve the same levels of sale volumes with 25%, 30%, 40% reduction in staff. And yet the pressure on them is the same. And they have to somehow find a way to make the squeaks pip, pip squeak, sorry. And I think that really came through, that the Leaders Summit almost ended up, in some ways, for quite a lot of them, being a kind of bearing of the soul for these leaders, and talking about their experiences and saying, yeah, we are having a tough time, but this is how I'm dealing with it. And at the same time, that gave a humanness to them that maybe wasn't there before. As you just said with AGFA, really far removed CEO, but being accessible. And off the back of that, then having people who attended the conference, and certainly I learned a huge amount, in seeing different approaches to leadership, different ways of dealing with those challenges that you would never have found out about any other way than this. And I think your idea, I mean, the association panel that we did, I think I've never seen those association heads open up and talk candidly in the way that you did. And, we sit on panels together all the time. Never seen that happen before. So, I think it's an incredibly laudable initiative. It went further than maybe you even envisioned.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Marcus, do you want to just, give us a kind of share some of the numbers from those the Leaders Summit, the event before? Just give us a bit of an idea of kind of what we were getting from this in terms of the people, the type of delegates, and share with us some of those key numbers.
Sure. Yeah. The Leaders Summit was the most recent event, and I think actually, following on from what you were all saying, we were perhaps expecting a smaller level of interest because it was a slightly more, to some extent, more narrow. It wasn't focused on technology, but we were surprised with the interest and the numbers actually going forward. It kind of, I guess, concluded a year's worth of work, really. I think we thought about launching the first virtual event in around March last year, and ran that in June. A 3-day event, achieved about 1,600 delegates in 3 days, and then we that was very much about sharing what people's thoughts were at that moment in time, and I think that was a real perhaps a crisis point, and a coming together. And we addressed various different markets and so on, and talked about various different things. A lot of interest at that point in market analysis and so on, and expected recovery times, and whether people would be going, when would the market return to going to events and so on. And I guess at that point we were all looking to October, thinking, well, by October we'll start returning to events, and obviously that did not happen. We followed up that 3-dayer with a big 5-dayer in October. It was really challenging, had a huge amount of sessions, huge amount of speakers, 5 different focuses. I think one of the things we found with the first event is that it, you said yourself, democratizing and access. We had a much bigger representation of people attending from a younger age group, which isn't typical of perhaps live trade shows. And also, I think sort of over 50% from the sort of 18 to 35, and also a more equal gender balance too, which is interesting. We had a whole day on the October event in Young Guns that Karis hosted, which was quite refreshing, and so on and so forth. But over 4,000 delegates for that, huge amount of work. And then we looked ahead to the following calendar year, and launched those and ran those 2 events. The February event was a 2-dayer conference, more focused on technology, and we have a theme this year of adaptability. The theme for that event was much focused around adaptation and adaptability, and how technology can enable that. And then obviously the Leaders Summit. So in total, it's from a very sort of low level, like no level, in fact. We've managed to achieve over 8,800 delegates from over 80 countries, 85 countries, 318 speakers, 183 sessions. So it's culminated in a lot of we think really sort of interesting, diverse, different sort of content parts. And I think in the process we've learned a lot as well. So we've learned a lot more about printing technology and printing production. So it's been really sort of valuable. Feedback from the market's been really positive. Every event we ask people, what do you think? Because we want to improve, the sort of continue improvement, and that's a continuous thing. So 85% of delegates reviewed the events as sort of very helpful, extremely helpful. 96% rated the events as good, very good, or excellent in terms of the content. So yeah, we're kind of I think broadly on the right track. And as you've said, there are some frailties with the platforms that we use, and we're trying to, I guess, rewinding to a year ago, we're trying really hard to replicate live with virtual, and I think we've reached a point where we know that we can't actually do that, and that isn't really the point. And the point is to create something valuable that stands alone as a place to share insight, information, and to some extent connect with people. Concurrently, I'll go tangentially, we have FuturePrint.tech, which is a kind of platform for content, deep dive information on print technology, and that has also grown hugely in tandem, really. So we had 400 subscribers back in March last year. Now we have 11,000, and that's just replicated really in terms of the number of visits on the site last year and then this year. Yeah, I mean that's just sort of really underlines the interest in kind of, I guess, content that's topical, that's helpful, and also gives people a bit of a glimpse into the future. Also, I think people want to come together with content that perhaps is optimistic, that is looking ahead, that is tackling some of the issues, but it isn't sort of just mass media kind of doom and gloom, which is what we've become used to. Perhaps so far with the content, the focus has been a bit more on the marketing kind of side of things, so people launching new products and so on, and then we had leadership too. And going forward for our next stop, we have our next event in the end of June. We call it the FuturePrint Tech Fest. It's a technology event for technical people, so we want to kind of go deeper into the technology, because we think, and this is a kind of a tech acceleration in the last 12 months, both in the interest in technology and how that can help people adapt, but also in the amount of innovation, because this has been such a rich time for innovation. Teams have really innovated. So the other thing I'd say from all of this is that with the colours, as you suggested, and in the middle of the summer, they've got a nice sunset and everything else, is that coming out of the Leaders Summit, and one of the things that really struck me is how optimistic all of them were about the future. And that there is a coming boom, and really it's about you know, that acceleration or acceleration, you want to call it, that isn't going to slip back into the kind of pace that we had before COVID. That is only going to stay or get quicker. And now it's time to kind of really get deep into the technology.
Brilliant. Thank you, Marcus. That's good to pick
Okay.
up on. Can I just go back to actually Brendan and Pat? So the interesting things there, Brendan, I'll start with you. Obviously, doing what you do as kind of general manager of a trade association, have you noticed similar sort of things with the virtual technology? Has it kind of worked for you as well? I know you do breakfast briefing type things. Is it generally people are getting it now? They're more comfortable with it generally?
Yeah, I mean, certainly I think the way that the trends have developed is that, to start with, it was a novelty. So you could run a virtual event and you didn't have to work that hard to get attendance at the start, because it was new, it was fun, it was different. We were all locked in our houses, and it was quite easy to get big attendance. So if you look back to August last year when we ran Punchback Print, I didn't have to work that hard, and we got 500 delegates through to that. You know, and I was surprised. I mean, we were aiming for about 100, and it just took off. So that surprised me, as you know, I've done event organization for a long time. Then fast forward 3-4 months, and the opposite started to happen, where you got digital malaise and people really getting sick of being on Zoom and et cetera, et cetera. But that was offset against the fact that simply no physical events were going to happen. So there was a small time where, despite the fact that all the digital events were going on, they were very difficult to get people to attend to, because they had this hope that physical events would restart. Then when it became clear physical events weren't going to happen again for a long time, it all came back again. Because, you know, as you've done, whether it was through the FuturePrint Virtual Conference, the Leaders Summit, the summit itself, there is a desire and a need for people to connect, for people to understand and have industry trends boiled down and synthesized and put through to them really quickly. And that can't go away. People need that. Printers need that. Manufacturers need that. And this has filled a space. So I think people have gotten over themselves now and accepted it. And I think digital formats are going to be here for a long time to come.
Yeah, I think I kind of concur with that. We've learned a lot as we went, and exactly as you said, there were things that we did well and things that we didn't do so well. What we've tried to do is evolve our proposition, so we're tackling different parts of the market. So as you said, you know, offer maybe something that's more sales driven, marketing driven, product driven, then maybe flip to, as we did with the Leaders Summit, something that's much more visionary. And then, as Marcus mentions, we're going down the route, mainly because the research seems to suggest there's an interest in the technical side. You know, the people also want to know and understand the technical side. So the ability we have with this is to evolve what you offer and tailor it quicker probably than big traditional trade shows or big events. So it's quite unique in that respect. Pat, I just wondered whether you were equally seeing the same sort of thing. You know, you use this technology a lot. You share a lot, you know, do a lot of webinars. Are you similarly seeing things?
So I stopped counting at 160 online events that I was personally participating as a presenter in last year between March and December. It was, I think, I agree with everything that Brendan has said, because I think that part of what happened is initially it was, oh my God, do I have to be bothered trying to learn Zoom and Skype and whatever other platform? And then it was, the only way I'm going to either present my product or learn anything is to get involved. So, okay. And then it was, your mailbox was so full of invitations to virtual events that, you know, if you actually attended all of them, you were never getting any work done. And I think that became a challenge for potential sponsors, because they knew they needed visibility, they needed to be in front of people, but then, you know, you're being made 50 offers in a week for virtual events. Which ones do you sponsor? You know, where are you going to get the biggest bang for your buck? I mean, that's not any different than a normal year where you're being pitched every event known to mankind, but I think that it felt different somehow. And so by the time we got to the beginning of this year, I think a lot of the big vendors that I work with regularly were, I was getting phone calls and emails saying, hey, we got pitched this event, we got pitched this event, we got, which one do you think is going to work best for me? Where am I going to be able to be the most visible? And you find that some people do it well. They make a pitch that really explains the value proposition, how they're going to market the event, how they're going to spotlight the event, what the real value proposition is from an education and a promotional standpoint. And others literally think they're just going to host a Zoom meeting and charge some money for it, and everything's going to be fine. And so right now, I think everyone that I'm talking to and a lot of the conversations I'm involved in, they revolve around a hybrid model. I think the expectation is that 2021, you've got to have participation in virtual events because those are going to be accessible. I already have 2 real-time live in-person events scheduled for this year. June and July. Not even looking out to Printing United yet.
We'll talk about that because that's something that we have
which
in
is
our
kind of
mind.
weird. But think about it.
Right.
Think about accessibility, though. It's sort of the point I made in the beginning. The thing that the virtual events did is they made content available to people who would never be given permission to travel to a live show. So these can't go away.
Yes.
They
as
are
Marcus
so
said,
valuable. Yeah, absolutely.
As Marcus said, younger group, gender differences, more women, which is great to have, coming into these events. So absolutely what you say is spot on. I just want to pick up with Karis something. Karis, obviously you've been working on all the events we've run, and the point that Brendan made, I guess, and perhaps mentioning is I think that FuturePrint generally, we were there right at the beginning, as Marcus mentioned, and we've been able to evolve this quite as we go and, learning from our mistakes. I just wondered, in the last couple of sessions that we've done, obviously the Leaders Summit and the conference, there were certain topics that seem to be coming out as crucial going forward. And I want to just draw us back to the print industry. And I think, sustainability, you did one of those panels. There was also a sense of gender issues. There's topics like workflow and software. There's certain things that are coming through. Tell me what's your view of kind of what's going to be hot in the next 6 months in print?
I mean, I think the sustainability issue isn't going away. It was great to see, at every event that we've run, there's been a sustainability kind of thread going through it. And I think one of the things is, even generally, it's not enough to be saying, oh, this is, recyclable. We do this, we're having, something slapped at the bottom of the website. People want to know exactly what that means now. And I think that's going to be kind of crucial going forward, that transparency, not just sustainability. I think transparency is going to be key. I think one of the main things that was really exciting is what everybody's kind of saying about packaging. And I think at the Leaders Summit, who did we have? We had HP, Inca, and Bob's, all really interesting visions for where they're taking the packaging market. And I think that's going to be fascinating to kind of keep an eye on.
I think you're right. Clearly that's one of those growth opportunities, and other segments of the print segments probably are going to be a little bit further behind, aren't they? Marcus, just to sort of weave us into your vision for the Tech Fest, what topics do you think we'll end up talking about there? What are the really important things that we're going to be looking towards?
I think the headline thing is digitization. So I think, we've been kind of in the inkjet world for a long time, and it's tempting to go purely down that path, but I think actually the bigger picture than that, digitization, and we've seen, I think, and Pat would probably concur to this, but software seems to come up massively as an emergent key strategic pillar for any sort of production. So I think that sort of digitization message is the big picture, and I think digital print sits within that, as does inkjet, but we want to try and approach it from that angle. So software, I think going forward is just going to grow and grow and grow. And that, like I said, that tech acceleration, that move towards automation, and I think, going even bigger picture, that sense to which humans ability for creativity is going to be really important in the future. And we don't need people to do menial things. We need people to do innovative, creative things, solve problems. And the technology there that can not remove people, but free people, liberate people to do the things that really enable value creation. And I think that's why we want to really look deeper into the technology side of things. And also the technical community within the print industry is significant, important, and they need an outlet. And
they've also they've been doing a lot of that sort of R&D work in this period, haven't they? So, you know, as has been mentioned several times, lots of innovation, software, you know. Would you agree, Pat?
Yeah, listen for the word platform. I mean, this is going to be the big buzzword of 2021. You touched on it some with Zydeco, right? Zydeco, sorry.
Yep.
They, I think they've definitely taken that Crispy Mountain infrastructure and turned it into something that is going to become massively important. You know, Ryan McAfee and I are huge fans of platforms, and even though we don't technically work together anymore, we are always together. And this is the thing, when we're together just having a chat, that's what we're talking about, is really? the way that we've used the word democratizing. Platforms democratize access to technology for printers of all sizes and types.
Yep.
So whether, if you're a small company, you might have thought that a spreadsheet was your only solution, you know, and your whiteboard and your sticky notes, but platform accessibility via subscription for small companies is there, and plug-in tools are there at a price point that can really supercharge your ability to increase your capacity without adding more hardware footprint. And that's what I love about what's happening now, all the research that's coming out of the last year.
And also that sense that there's printers have bought a lot of bits of kit. You know, they bought stuff that doesn't all necessarily fit together. And this ability for to bring a piece of software in that actually interconnects their business far more effectively, that's possibly the future, isn't it?
And there's so many options at so many price points. So if you're not a huge industrial printer, you know, you don't have to decide that these options are not for you. You can get efficiency, you can increase capacity without bankrupting yourself. And I think that's the real promise of these platforms as they grow.
Yeah, sure. Brendan, I mean, obviously being part of the association, are you seeing similar things? Are you hearing similar things?
Yeah, definitely. And I think, you know, if I go back to, you know, because I was consuming things at both the conference and the CEO summit.
Yeah.
I think that the big issue that many in our industry face is, let's just go really micro. You have printer A. They would have gone to a open house for a supplier. They would have gone to a Drupa. They would have gone to a regional trade show like, you know, Sign Digital UK or the Print Show.
Yeah.
And they would have picked up on trends that would have allowed them to keep their business relevant. And if I just take one talk from the conference, Exploring the Life of Ink, that was from Sun Chemical, which was Simon Daplin and Phil Jackman, that really hit home to me, because that is the power of this type of platform and what you've pulled together, because that was bringing out a trend, which is absolutely critical, that in the wide format inkjet market, it's not speeds and feeds and paper and everything else that's going to make you competitive. It's the ink you choose. Sure, that is where the battleground is now, and how fast you can burn through it, how long it goes, total life of ink cartridge. And that talk explored that. And that's critical for the industry to understand if you're diversifying into that area or in it. But if it wasn't for summits like this, you would not have got that information out, you know. So I think that's a key learning.
Brendan, that's a really good thing. You pointed to a session that you would, anyone listening to this and thinking, oh, should I go and watch a replay? You pointed to one. So I'm going to go around the room. Give me one that you would say, go and listen to. That was a good one. Karis. And it can't be the one you hosted. No, I'm only joking.
Oh,
it can be, of course it can be.
The ones that I hosted.
Yeah, exactly. Marcus, what would you say? Was there anyone?
I'd say, I'd be agnostic and say, get ready for the coming boom. Roger Martin Fagg, The Economist. The
Yeah, that was
behavioural
good.
economists, they're behavioural economists, and he delineates between the normal economists that government consult and media get in. He says they're the rational economists, and they're inherently miserable, because they are risk averse and everything else. And he's a behavioural economist, and he presupposes that people are not rational, so we are going to suddenly be liberated and freed from lockdown with a bit of money in our pocket, or perceived money, and it's just going to boom. And I just think, well, why not be positive?
Yeah. I'll give you a couple that I particularly, I actually like the Ken Stack session, which again is similarly not particularly, because it was interesting from the point of view of mergers and acquisitions. We're in a bit of a down period, but actually Ken was really interesting in the way he explained how some of those big buyouts have occurred in the past. So I'd refer that to anyone. I also think Christoph Gampers was a good session. Durst, he doesn't often, he's one of those guys that's quite difficult to pin down. It's exactly as you said, it was quite difficult to pin down some of these CEOs to find out what their vision was. If someone's looking at this thinking, oh, should I dip in, he's a good one to listen to. Pat, you're on mute.
So look, for me, it's down to who made compelling cases for change, right? And for me, I thought Kelvin did an amazing job with vPress, and one of the reasons I watch what vPress says is because they've managed to take a role of thought leadership in an incredibly crowded industry. I mean, I often joke that there's a web to print shop on every street corner in the Netherlands. It's like the Costa Coffee and the web to print shop. They're everywhere, but very few take a leadership role. Very few try to promote the value proposition. And so I loved what he said. Now, I also really liked the panel, the Leading Through Crisis, because for me, the takeaways were that you can survive, right? And there are an awful lot of companies out there that aren't really sure if they're going to make it through to the other side. I mean, you guys know, we have restaurants, and restaurants is not an industry you want to be in right now. And the question is, we're still alive, and we're still alive because we're listening to a lot of advice from a lot of people, from the restaurant associations, from everybody who are giving us little hints about, which way to look, how to bob, weave your way through to try and just stay alive long enough to get to the other side. So to me, that was a really important session. I think when it comes down to the look forward, all of the AGFA session to me was important, less for what was said and the little bit of news you made, but to the fact that here was a CEO willing to stand there and bare his soul. And every major hardware vendor is undergoing leadership change right now. And the troops are a little restless. So when the CEO is willing to stand there and tell stories and provide a view and give some insight into their soul, I think those are important things, and more CEOs should be willing to do that.
Yeah, I totally agree, and obviously we'll hopefully do this again next year, and we think it's something that possibly could create, we could take to a live format or a hybrid format, because if we could do something where you could have some CEOs coming together, that would be quite exciting.
I think you filled a void, because those are the kinds of sessions that we used to see at live events. Over the last year, if you were trying to get into the mind of the CEO, there was not really any place to go.
Yeah. And just going back to that point you made about in the restaurant industry, looking to the associations and to find, I would just say Brendan and his association IPIA in the UK, if you're
brilliant,
are doing a great job.
Absolutely.
A little bit of
and just to, because, and I love what I mean, I follow them. I'm so jealous of that big breakfast. But the other thing, remember that there are other associations that have been out there that have also been promoting and trying to help their constituents stay alive. So whatever country you're in, whatever country you're listening from, if you've lost touch with your association for your industry, this might be a good time to reach out.
Yeah, and there is a session from Ford Bowers, which was great.
Yeah,
I really enjoyed interviewing him. He's a really nice guy. He's not
and he's living the dream.
Yeah, and he's not, he's not a sort of senior, arrogant, I'm at the top of this huge association. He's a really nice guy, and I think Printing United
and a strategic thinker too. And I think that means that the members the people that are his constituency will get a lot of value from the fact that he's got good experience.
They do a great job. Karis, did you want to add anything just as we come kind of wrapping up?
Yeah, I think, well, first of all, I don't think we should be picking one to go back and see. I think everybody should go and watch every single replay from every single event. Good point. But I think, on a serious note, if you were to do that, there were kind of recurring themes, from the first virtual summit. And I think what it's really turned into, which has been so amazing to watch, is, a real community of both, the kind of the attendees of the events and also the speakers and the FuturePrint partners as well. And I think watching that, at the Leaders Summit, I felt almost like the sessions I'd done were kind of just conversations with old friends almost, because, we'd had some insight into what they were doing and we could, talk about their vision. And, it really is a community. I think in this space, in Inkjet, loads of FuturePrint partners and speakers, are working with each other, and sharing information and collaborating on projects. And it's just so amazing to see. So I think that's something that FuturePrint has done really well over the past year.
And thank you to you as well. Thank you to you as well, Karis. So on that, I'll just go to Marcus for a final note. Did you want to add anything, Marcus, obviously, either about the Tech Fest or anything that you just want to finish off with?
No, I think, just sort of echoing what Karis said, really, it has been a learning experience. It's been kind of a growth experience as well. It's been challenging, but equally quite rewarding and purposeful. So, it's not perfect, is it? But we're continuing to sort of evolve, and we're just really looking forward to hopefully bringing people together in real life in the future in some ways, but continuing with the kind of theme and energy and purpose, really. So it's great. I just feel really optimistic about the future, and I think the future, everybody else is prepared to adapt and learn again, fail. And I like Pat's session, which was kind of focused on that. And just accept you're going to fail, move out of that comfort zone, fail, but don't give up, because you build resilience by failing. Because what doesn't kill you does make you stronger. And as you emerge and when the world emerges from this, we're going to be doing different things, aren't we? And actually, it could be that we're doing better things. So I think I sort of finish on that optimistic note, really.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. I think I'll just say thank you, Brendan. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, Karis. Thank you very much for joining us. Thank you, Pat. Thank you for joining us from the US, which is great. Hopefully, we may see you in America in the autumn or the fall in Orlando.
I'm hoping.
Yeah, we're hoping. Fingers crossed. And Marcus, thanks to you. And look forward to seeing anyone at the Inkjet. Actually, it's not called that. It's the FuturePrint Tech Fest, which will take place on the 29th and 30th of June. So hopefully people will get involved. Thanks very much to all of you.